Ukrainian fighters have destroyed a bridge in Russia's Bryansk region that was used by the Russian army to transport personnel and equipment. Ukrainian aerial reconnaissance units, having discovered that the bridge was mined, launched a strike using a kamikaze drone. As a result, the bridge exploded, collapsed, and became unusable. The bridge had been mined with anti-tank explosives by Russian forces. Their aim was to blow up the bridge in case evacuation of their troops became necessary and to hinder the advance of Ukrainian forces.
The Kremlin is likely preparing the Russian population for unpopular decisions in the war against Ukraine. This is the conclusion reached by Z propagandist of Russia, Daniil Tulenkov. He drew attention to two main warning signs of approaching de-escalation. The first is the toughening of US President Donald Trump's rhetoric towards the Kremlin, his ultimatum to end the war in 10 days. Moscow will not be able to ignore it. The second warning sign is the speech by Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, who unexpectedly declared that Russia has no allies in the war against Ukraine. The hardening of Mr. Trump's rhetoric, coupled with Lavrov's historic speech, are quite loud warning signs that the outcome may be closer than ever before. And it may be an unpopular decision, Tulenkov wrote. He particularly emphasized that Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov acknowledged for the first time Russia's de facto isolation in the international arena. Lavrov's speech about "for the first time without allies, we are fighting the entire West" is a de facto explanation for this unpopular decision, the propagandist noted. Such statements are not made by chance. In the conditions of military failures and foreign policy pressure, the Kremlin may try to get out of the war, hiding behind a sacrifice for the sake of peace. But inside Russia, any talk about defeat or mistakes will now be prohibited. I strongly recommend to refrain from all the Putin slill, "Why did we fight?" etc. They will punish everyone for this harshly and without preventive talks. Tulenkov noted. He called on the audience to completely abandon any discussion of the Kremlin and to demonstrate maximum loyalty. The wisest decision now would be loyalty to any decision of the highest political leadership. Z bloggers conducted a survey among readers about Russia's main enemy. The result shocked the propagandist. Z propagandist fighter bomber conducted a poll among his audience about who they considered Russia's main enemy. The results were a real blow to the Kremlin propaganda. The most votes were not received by external enemies but by its own corrupt officials. About 10,000 subscribers of the Z channel took part in the voting. To the question, who is Russia's main enemy? 27% of respondents chose the option corrupt officials. Another 21% voted for the item domestic fools. For comparison, only 2% of participants chose Ukrainians. 8% chose the United States and 4% chose NATO. These figures indicate deep disappointment in what is happening and a loss of trust in the government, even among those who previously fully supported the Putin regime and the war against Ukraine. After 3.5 years of full-scale aggression, Russian society is tired of the war and sees no prospects. Loyal audiences increasingly accuse the Kremlin of corruption, incompetence, and failure to achieve military goals. This poll became an indicator that propaganda is no longer able to keep even the most patriotic part of society in the usual paradigm of enemies from outside. Now Russians openly call the system built by dictator Vladimir Putin their main enemy. Ukraine has launched the largest construction work to strengthen the front line since the beginning of Russia's invasion. The large-scale construction is aimed at deterring a new summer offensive by Russian troops. The Wall Street Journal reports this. According to the newspaper, the Ukrainian army is currently focusing on the rapid construction of anti-tank ditches and barbed wire in the east. The army that digs deeper is the army that survives. Ole, a military engineer responsible for nearly 300 kilometers of defense lines as part of the large-scale project, told reporters. According to the newspaper, the frontline strengthening program has been underway for 2 years. At the same time, it faces constant problems, delays, Russian strikes, as well as corruption scandals and arrests of officials. In particular, over the past year and a half, Russian troops have broken through several weak areas of Ukrainian defense and used unfinished borders in the north to launch a new offensive with about 50,000 troops. Ukraine hopes that the triple belt of fortifications can stop similar breakthroughs in the east, where Russia is fighting for Pokrovsk and Konstantinivka. The article says, the Wall Street Journal reports that Ukraine is building 3 defense belts. The first line is constructed by infantrymen directly at the front. Second line created by engineer troops. Third line formed by local administrations to protect key cities and regional centers. The goal of these defense lines is to stop Russian troops before they break through. In 2024, more than 46 billion hryvnias have been allocated for fortifications, almost 2% of the total military budget. Officials claim that the actual amount is even higher, but do not disclose exact figures. In September 2022, 7 months after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine began, Moscow recognized the regions as part of Russia, even though it did not fully control them, and began losing some occupied areas within weeks. Putin wants to get much more, including the immediate lifting of all sanctions the West slapped on Russia since Crimea's 2014 annexation. Meanwhile, Moscow is boosting its push along the crescent-shaped front line that stretches more than 1,000 kilometers. But military analysts say Moscow simply lacks manpower and weaponry. They don't have enough power. General Lieutenant Ihor Romanenko, former deputy head of the General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces,